Well tackled right round the boots by Craig Young. Graham Quinn, Murray pops the pass up to Khan. Back inside to Dowling. Dowling nearly through the gap, gets it away, then to Miles. Miles sprinting to the line. It'll be a try. That's a good try. What a forceful run from Miles.
Well, Jean, the history of rugby league in Queensland pretty much goes back to the beginning of the game itself, but really no one took this state seriously until Origin, and you were part of the early years of this rugby league revolution north of the Tweed. What was that experience like?
Yeah, it was exciting times, and you know we were getting belted by New South Wales for lots of years in a row, and you know, and then this very smart gentleman named Senator McAuliffe said that let's bring all our boys home and play state of origin footy. And it didn't go over too well initially. However, you know, once they ran out on that great field at Lang Park, it all changed when the great man led that team out, and you know, that's the legacy that we continue here today. You
were a young man, you've just moved down from Townsville, signed with Wynnum Manly, and then all of a sudden you're thrust into representing your state. That was a meteoric rise. Yeah, and then to walk into camp and see, you know, the legends in there, that was an eye-opener for me, and very intimidating, but you know, once you got inside those doors, they just wrapped their arms around you, and it was such an easy transition to go out there and play good footy with them, because they were legends. You had so much respect for them, and you wanted to play for those guys. Growing up in Townsville, did you think you'd be able to make a career out of rugby league? No, not at all. Like, I was a glazier out of school. I was a glazier for 6.5 years and played footy with the one club up there in South. And then a few scouts were up there at a Folder Shield grand final, and got an offer from them, and it turned into a bit of a bun fight. That particular first signing, I signed for East down here, and I got home and realised that I've got to leave home. I've got to leave Mum. And I sat on the bed beside Mum and I said, I've signed for East, I'm going to Brisbane. And she said, oh, I'm happy for you. And then a couple other guys from Townsville come along too, so we all regrouped at Wynnum Manly, and that's where it all started in 1981. An unbelievable experience. You step into the State of Origin arena at Lang Park. Arthur Beetson is your coach. Wally Lewis is your captain. What is that experience like? Are you able to take it all in? Yeah, well, the previous year, in 1981, I played for Queensland, which was just the interstate series, and we played at Leichhardt Oval in front of about 500 people, and you know, playing against Mick Cronin and Steve Rogers and all the guns in New South Wales, and that was my initiation to state footy, and Arthur was up front. Arthur played in that match, which was a highlight for me to play with, the great man as well. What did you learn off Artie? Artie made it fun, you know, back in the day. He did have a serious side, but you know, it was a lot of fun, which you know, which you got to respect as well. One particular day there, I was in camp and the drink again, and I overstepped the mark the night before, and we used to go for a walk of a morning in those days, and it was a 7 o'clock walk. The team assembles downstairs. Anyway, I was still in bed, and he jumped on the in-house telephone and said, you better get your backside down here really quick, or you won't be playing for Queensland ever again. So that was a nice kick in the bum for me too. So once I got on the wrong side of Arthur, I thought I got to pull my head in here if I want to have a career down this way. So, but that was a nice way of saying, boy, you're in the big smoke now, behave yourself. There's some steep learning curves along the way, especially in those early years. I read that, was it 82, and the QRL wanted you all to sign a loyalty agreement, and is this on game day? And they said, if you guys don't sign, you're one of a few. They said, we've got other people who want to represent this state. Yeah. So they're trying to strong-arm you on the eve of the game, and did you sign under duress? Yeah, of course, yeah. But they did have players on standby. If we didn't sign that dotted line before we ran it, took the field that night, they had guys that were ready to come and take our place, which, you know, because we were looking at maybe playing in Sydney the following year. However,
Ron McAuliffe said, if you don't sign that, you don't play for Queensland.
You had ringside seats to some really big moments in those heady days of Origin. Darryl Broman, who was a champion in the BRL, absolutely annihilated by Les Boyd. Do you remember that moment?
Yeah, I can remember that tackle like it was yesterday, you know, and it was a very ordinary tackle, to say the least, and he got him really well too, you know, and he should have been sent off, and he didn't get sent off, and I think we went on to win that game anyway. But yeah, that wasn't a nice night.
It became a blood sport there for a little while, and the crowd were in on it, and that's when I think we realised how serious this was. I think it was 88, Wally got sin-binned, and Lang Park just became... It became gross. Yep. It was raining beer cans, and it just turned feral.
There's a bit of a stink going on the back line. Lewis came in 20 metres to get into that. Well, that's not on. And the cans are going onto the field too.
Yeah, well, that's how passionate they were about it, because Mick Stone put Wally in the can for back-chatting, because I think Greg Kinescu was having a bit of a wrestle on the ground with somebody, and he was going to get put in the can, and Wally obviously came to his defence and spoke to Mick probably, you know, not how you would speak to and respect a referee, and Mick didn't hesitate to put him in the sin bin, but that's when the crowd reacted. And I remember the old hill over there at Lang Park, and you know, they used to sell cans there, and that's exactly what happened. We had to sort of calm the crowd down, because they weren't about to stop at any time.
The cans are coming onto the field here. This is a nasty moment. Look at this. Where are the cans coming on the field? This is not good.
There's so many cans, and you can see in the footage that the players end up going and scooping all the cans and throwing them back over the fence to them. A lot of them were full too, I might add.
It was just an era of champions and a couple of immortals in the making. Competition for jerseys, always a healthy thing. What was it like to go pound for pound with Mal Meninga, and did he make you a better centre?
Oh, of course, and Chris Close, Choppy in there as well. There's three of us all vying for two positions. And there was a number of occasions that we all made the side, but unfortunately no one wanted to play wing. Back in those days, those wingers, they weren't the most liked players in the team. They didn't do a great deal. And of course, like, you know, if you were lucky enough to play in the centre as well, it was either Mal or Choppy beside you, so, you know, you're in very good hands. But that competitive spirit that we had between each other, we're all still great mates, and we all were mates back then. There was never any animosity amongst us. It was, you know, if you beat me for the centre position, I'll play on the wing. You don't do much out there anyway. However, it all worked out in the end, and you know, that's what when you mention about making you a better player, yeah, sure, you know, like that. There's nothing better than having either Chris Close inside or outside, or Mal vice versa. So, you know, it's very hard not to be able to play well, and the King just inside of us too.
Well, what about the King? I think he's the greatest Origin player we've ever seen, but to make an immortal again, you've got to have champions around him. Do you feel like you had that connection with him beyond mateship? You just had the chemistry?
Yeah, we had it. Like, we went away on the 82 Kangaroo Tour together, and I didn't know Wally that well prior to that. He was playing for Valleys and I was with Wynnum. But when we got over there and we spent 3 months together and got up to some things that I'll remember for the rest of my life, you know, which was life-changing, and got to know him really well. What
reputation did Wally Lewis have in the game during those early years for Queensland, for the Kangaroos, even down in Sydney?
I wasn't the most liked person, you know. He was looked at as a bit arrogant at times, which, you know, we understood the arrogance of it, and we just got on with life. But, you know, some people take it the wrong way. But he was he wasn't treated real well either. You know, every time we go down to Sydney, he'd get booed. I remember he got booed, you know, when he ran out and he was captaining our country, which is, you know, that's not nice. And but you know, at the end of the day, they'd boo him, but that just turned him on. You know, he just turned the class on and break their hearts when you know, by winning the footy game.
By this stage, your reputation's growing, and it's reached the highest levels of some of the biggest power movers that we have in the game. Kerry Packer picks up the phone and says, "Righto, you and your mate Wally, come down. I want to make you Manly Sea Eagles."
Yeah.
Did he send a private jet. How did that day go down?
Well, I don't remember the private jet, but Wally says it was a private jet, but there must have been 400 other people on the aircraft actually. But we were sitting up the front in those bigger seats anyway, which was a
You're up the business end.
Yes. But we got to Sydney. We went straight to Kerry's office, and which was, yes, I was actually very nervous. Most intimidating person I've ever met. You know, like, I walked into his office because only one of us could go in at a time.
Did you have a game plan with Wal going into this meeting?
Yes, we were going to ask for very similar money.
How many dollars and cents are we talking in this day and age?
These are the true figures, right?
Yes,
like,
go.
Wally has exaggerated a tad in places, but I asked for 100,000, and which was a lot of money back in those days. And you know, the Ray Prices of the world and the Brett Kennys of the world, and they were getting very similar money. So I thought, well, bugger it, we'll go for it.
You can beat them in Origin. It must be worth as much.
My meeting with Kerry was very quick. He said, how much do you want to come and play for Manly? I said, 100,000. He said, you've got it. Send the other bloke in. And that was my meeting.
That was it?
But, you know, prior to that, he had his big size 14s up on the table, on the desk, and he's puffing on a dart, of course, yeah. And so that was my meeting, and he said, you've got it. Send the other rooster in, send the other guy in. So we crossed paths, and while he's trying to eyeball me, and I've got a smile on me like a cat in a fish shop, you know, because I've got 100K. I thought, geez, I've done well. And he's gone in, sat down with Kerry, and they've had their discussion. He tells a story about what he did. But at the end of the day, Wally got 150,000, I got 100,000. So he's called us both back in, and he said, "Okay, welcome to Manly. Sign the dotted lines there. PBL will pay you this much, and Manly will pay you that much." And he said, "I got you too cheap. Here's another 25." So I ended up with 125, and Wally had 150. So I was happy with those deals. But unfortunately, like I've still got my contract at home. Yeah, in my up in the attic, because we'd signed deals that day, and they were going to lodge them with the New South Wales Rugby League back in the day. And
what happened? How did you not end up? It was all signed, sealed, and delivered. You had Packer in your corner. Yeah. How did this not go down?
And we're coming down to you know, Manly won the grand final that year that we signed for too, 87. But because of Ron McAuliffe and those deals we were talking about earlier, well, we had to sign an agreement to say that we'll stay in Queensland the following year unless you bring your deal back to us and we can match it and we'll keep you here. They end up giving us a really good offer to stay here for the following year. So we played the last year in the Brisbane Rugby League in 1987 before the Bronx happened in 1988. But it was a great experience and the most intimidating day I've ever had.
Do Queenslanders get Origin more than New South Wales? Do you think that New South Wales don't understand the psyche of a Maroon?
They get very upset about this. We always say, we get it, and I'm sure they get it too. And I'd get my back up too if I had the opposition saying you don't get it, because they've had some great wins and great players come through, and surely they get it. Of course they get it, but we just get it a little bit better.
What is the magic of this maroon jumper?
I honestly think it's the legacy of Arthur. Arthur, you know, all he wanted to do was play footy and make sure that his mob was being looked after. And we've been continuing that legacy on now for the last 15 years since Arthur's been gone, and it will continue because he had such an impact, you know, without even knowing half these guys. And they all know the legacy of Arthur Beeson because it's all about tradition with Origin and, you know, who came before you and the pioneers, and everyone remembers that image of him running out there with the resin on his jersey, and that's State of Origin footy. He started it.
And now we have current day champions like Reuben Cotter, who really have had this meteoric rise, thrown into the Origin arena, plays a full 80 minutes, sometimes out of position, no questions asked, and he's your Wally Lewis medal winner. Yeah. And you've got a shooting star like Reece Walsh, who I've never seen anyone look more comfortable in a Maroons jersey straight away. Reuben's exceptional, like, you know, come from Serena, been in the Cowboys system, picked for Origin, and just performed exactly how Billy thought he would perform. He'll be a Queensland player for a long, long time. And as for Reece, well,
Reece has got to just keep on doing what he's doing, but if I could give Reece a little bit of advice, just be a little bit humbled, Reece, because Queenslanders are humble. He's a #1 for Queensland for a long, long time too.
What about at NRL level? The Brisbane Broncos are in this blush of this new era, young, exciting, they're athletic, they've got this great attitude. Do you think they'll be there on grand final day?
Yep, yeah, I do, yeah. I like what they're doing, and they've got their defence in order now, and yeah, they've got a wonderful team, and a team that does mind doing the hard yards, and then some fancy backs out the back too.
Well, Gene Miles, former Origin great, making Maroon champions for the future. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, Bonnie.